Detective Savannah Brooks had always known that the job came with risks. She had faced down violent criminals, corrupt officers, and dangerous situations throughout her career. But she never imagined the biggest fight of her life would be against the very system she swore to protect. It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday morning. The kind she rarely got to enjoy. Savannah was standing in the kitchen, flipping pancakes while Elijah, her 9-year-old son, sat at the counter, kicking his feet against the stool. "Mom," he said between bites of his syrup-covered breakfast, "do you really have to work tomorrow?" Savannah smiled as she set a fresh pancake on his plate. "Unfortunately, yes. Bad guys don't take days off, so neither do I." Elijah pouted, poking at his food with his fork. "I wish you could just arrest them all at once and be done with it." Savannah chuckled, ruffling his messy curls. "If only it worked that way, kiddo." She was about to grab her coffee when she heard it. The sound of tires screeching outside. Her body tensed immediately. Years of training had sharpened her instincts, something was wrong. Savannah turned toward the window just in time to see 3 unmarked black SUVs slam to a stop in front of her house. Before she could even react. Boom. 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 Loud, aggressive pounding on the front door shook the entire house. "Savannah Brooks. Open up. This is the police." Elijah flinched. "Mom." Savannah's heart was pounding. She grabbed his arm and pulled him behind her, shielding him with her body. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, don't move, okay?" Elijah nodded, his eyes wide with fear. Bang! The door was kicked open, slamming against the wall as SWAT officers flooded the house, weapons raised. Down on the ground. Now. For a split second, Savannah thought this was some kind of misunderstanding, until she saw who was leading the charge. Captain Malcolm Grayson. Her superior officer. Her mentor. The man who had once called her the best detective in the department. Now, he was standing in her living room with cold, calculated eyes, watching as his men tore apart her home. "Grayson." Savannah's voice was sharp, disbelieving. "What the hell is going on?" "Detective Savannah Brooks, you are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and embezzlement." Savannah stared at him. Her world tilted. "What?" she breathed. The officers grabbed her, twisting her arms behind her back. Cold steel snapped around her wrists. "Mommy!" Elijah's panicked voice broke through the chaos. Savannah struggled. "Don't take me from my son," she shouted, trying to wrench herself free. Elijah tried to run toward her, but an officer blocked him. Tears streamed down his small face as he fought against the officer holding him back. "No. No. Don't take her." Savannah desperately turned to Grayson. "You know me. You know I wouldn't do this. Tell them this is a mistake." Grayson's expression didn't change. Savannah's blood turned cold. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned. "Please, Grayson," she begged, her voice breaking. "My son." Grayson stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough for her to hear. "Should have kept your nose out of things, Savannah." The words sent a sharp chill down her spine. She went still, her mind racing. This wasn't just an arrest. This was a setup. And then, he smirked. A knowing, calculated smirk. Savannah's entire body went numb. The last thing she saw before the officers dragged her out of the house was Elijah's tear-streaked face, reaching for her. Then the doors slammed shut. And everything went dark. Savannah sat in the back of the police transport van, her hands cuffed tightly in front of her. The metal bit into her wrists, but she barely felt the pain. Her mind was spinning, racing, trying to process what had just happened. She had spent her entire career fighting criminals, and now she was being treated like one. The van jerked forward, the rumbling of the engine vibrating through the cold metal walls. Two uniformed officers sat in the front, talking quietly, but Savannah wasn't listening. All she could think about was Elijah. His terrified face, his small hands reaching for her as she was dragged away. Was he okay? Was he safe? She clenched her fists. She had to get out of here. She had to fight. A voice broke through her thoughts. Not what you expected, huh? Savannah turned her head. Sitting across from her, in the dim light of the van, was Detective Cole Mercer, her former partner. Her stomach twisted. Cole had been her best friend on the force. They had worked together for years, saved each other's lives more times than she could count. If there was anyone she thought she could trust, it was him. And yet, here he was. Sitting across from her, looking at her like she was just another criminal. Savannah's jaw tightened. You too, Cole. His face was unreadable. The evidence is solid, save. Savannah laughed bitterly. Evidence? What evidence? Cole sighed. They found your fingerprints on stolen money from an evidence locker. A witness claims you helped cover up a murder. And there's security footage of you entering the precinct after hours. Savannah's blood turned to ice. She had never done any of those things. Not once. This is a setup, she said firmly. Someone planted that evidence, Cole. And you know it. Cole's jaw tightened. For the briefest second, she saw hesitation in his eyes. You need to start thinking about your son, he said quietly. Savannah's chest tightened. That was the moment she knew. Cole wasn't on her side. Not completely. Not yet. But if there was hesitation in his voice, that meant he wasn't fully convinced either. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. You think I'd do this? After everything we've been through? After everything we fought against? Cole didn't answer. Savannah stared at him, trying to reach the man she once trusted with her life. You know me, she whispered. And deep down, you know this doesn't add up. Before he could respond, the van came to a sudden stop. The back doors swung open, and bright lights flooded inside. A group of officers stood outside, their faces blank and professional. Savannah was hauled to her feet and dragged out of the van. She squinted against the harsh light. Then, she saw where they had taken her. Ironwood Correctional Facility. A high-security prison. Savannah's stomach dropped. They weren't even taking her to a holding cell. They were processing her like a convict. She barely had time to react before they shoved her forward, leading her inside the facility. As they walked through the heavy steel doors, Savannah caught a glimpse of Captain Malcolm Grayson standing by the entrance, watching her with a smug expression. She locked eyes with him. And in that moment, she made a vow. I will not rot in this place. She didn't know how, and she didn't know when. But she was going to prove the truth. And she was going to get back to her son. The cold steel doors of Ironwood Correctional Facility slammed shut behind Savannah with a thunderous echo, sealing her fate, at least for now. The air inside was thick with the scent of disinfectant, sweat, and hopelessness. Every step she took in the intake hallway felt heavier, as if the weight of a corrupt system was pressing down on her shoulders. Her handcuffs were removed, but before she could even rub her sore wrists, a female officer shoved a bright orange jumpsuit into her hands. Get changed, the officer barked. Savannah hesitated, standing in the harsh fluorescent light, her mind still racing. Just yesterday, she had been a respected detective. Now, she was being processed like a criminal. Move it, Brooks, another officer snapped. She clenched her jaw, swallowing the anger that bubbled inside her, and turned toward the changing area. As she stripped out of her street clothes and pulled on the stiff prison uniform, she caught her reflection in a smudged mirror. Her own eyes looked like those of a stranger. Tired. Hollow. But not broken. Never broken. As she stepped back into the hallway, another guard grabbed her arm, yanking her forward. Time to meet your new family. The processing room was a wide, sterile space lined with steel benches. Other female inmates sat slouched against the walls, whispering in hushed voices, their eyes darting toward Savannah as she was led inside. She felt their stares, some curious, some amused, some outright hostile. A woman with a jagged scar down her cheek leaned forward, her lips curling into a smirk. Well, well. Looks like we got a cop in our midst. Savannah ignored her. She had been around criminals her entire career. She knew that if she showed even a sliver of fear, they would tear her apart. A second woman, taller and bulkier, snorted. Guess you ain't above the law after all, huh, detective? Savannah sat down on the nearest empty bench, keeping her posture relaxed, but alert. She wasn't here to make friends. She wasn't here to start a war. She was here to get out. But before she could think of a plan, a guard walked in and barked her name. Brooks. You have a visitor. Savannah's head snapped up. Her pulse raced. Could it be Elijah? Was her son okay? She stood immediately, trying to hide the desperation clawing at her chest. The guard grabbed her arm and led her down a long corridor, her heart pounding with every step. When Savannah stepped into the visitor's room, her breath caught in her throat. Sitting on the other side of the thick glass was Jacob Miles, her lawyer. Not Elijah. Her heart sank, but she quickly pushed her emotions down. Now was not the time. She grabbed the phone on her side of the partition. Jacob, looking weary and tense, did the same. You doing okay? He asked. Savannah scoffed. I'm in prison, Jacob. How do you think I'm doing? Jacob sighed, rubbing his temple. I know. And I'm working on it. But Savannah, it's bad. Savannah leaned forward. How bad? Jacob hesitated, then slid a file onto the table on his side of the glass. She couldn't touch it, but she could read the words written on the first page. New witness testimony, against Savannah Brooks. Her stomach dropped. They found a witness, she whispered. Jacob's jaw tightened. Not just any witness. Your own captain, Malcolm Grayson, is testifying against you. Savannah's blood turned to ice. That smug bastard. She should have known. This isn't just about money or a setup, Jacob continued in a hushed voice. Grayson wants you buried. He wants to make sure you never see the outside of this place again. Savannah felt rage bubbling inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She took a slow breath. And what about Elijah? Is my son safe? Jacob hesitated, too long. Savannah's fists clenched. Jacob. He exhaled. Elijah's fine. For now. But, he hesitated. Your sister Naomi took custody of him. Savannah's stomach twisted. Naomi. They hadn't spoken in years. Naomi had never approved of Savannah's job. She had always said she was too reckless, too dedicated to the badge instead of family. And now Naomi had Elijah. Savannah gritted her teeth. She needed to get out of here. Fast. Listen to me, she said, her voice low and firm. Grayson is dirty. You and I both know it. Find the cracks in his story. Find proof. Because I swear to you, Jacob, I am not going to rot in this place. Jacob exhaled. I'll do what I can. But be careful in there, Savannah. You don't have many allies. Savannah's jaw tightened. I don't need allies, she murmured. I need the truth. The guard stepped forward, signaling that her time was up. Jacob gave her a final determined look before hanging up the phone. Savannah did the same, then stood up as the guards grabbed her arms. As they led her back to her cell, only one thought burned in her mind. If Grayson thought he could break her, he was dead wrong. She would fight. She would survive. And she would find a way back to her son. Savannah had been in Ironwood Correctional Facility for less than 48 hours, and already, she knew one thing: she couldn't stay here. The prison was a different world, one where the rules didn't work the way they did outside. Out there, she had been Detective Savannah Brooks, a woman who took down criminals and fought for justice. In here, she was just another inmate. And worse? She was a cop in a place filled with people she had put behind bars. Savannah had spent years building cases, making arrests, testifying in court. Some of the women in Ironwood were here because of her. And they hadn't forgotten. She learned that quickly when she was sent to the yard. The moment Savannah stepped onto the open-air courtyard, the heat hit her first. The sun beat down, reflecting off the cracked pavement. The air smelled of sweat, cigarettes, and something else: tension. Groups of women were scattered around, some clustered at the weight benches, some lingering near the fences, and others watching her from the picnic tables. She knew that stare. Predatory. Curious. Testing her. Savannah kept her head high and her step steady, making her way toward the far side of the yard. She wouldn't cower. But she wouldn't pick a fight, either. Not yet. She had barely taken 5 steps when she heard it. Well. If it isn't Detective Brooks. Savannah stopped. A group of 4 women stood near the fence. The one who had spoken stepped forward, a tall woman with a shaved head and a jagged scar running from her temple down to her jaw. Savannah recognized her immediately. Carmen Vega. She had arrested Carmen 3 years ago for armed robbery. A career criminal with a history of violence, Carmen had been sentenced to 15 years. And now, she was smirking. Savannah didn't blink. Vega. Carmen tilted her head, amused. Didn't think I'd see you here, detective. Guess the system finally chewed you up, huh? Savannah said nothing. She knew how this worked. Carmen wanted a reaction. Instead, Savannah kept her face blank and started walking past her. A sharp shove to her shoulder stopped her. The yard went quiet. Savannah slowly turned back to Carmen, her heartbeat steady, but her muscles tensed. Where you going, cop? Carmen taunted. We were just getting started. Savannah exhaled through her nose. I'm not here to make trouble, Vega. Carmen grinned. Too late for that. You see, a lot of people in here. They remember you. Savannah's jaw clenched. She knew this wouldn't end with words. Carmen took a step closer. So, let's talk, Brooks. You gonna be one of those cops who keeps her head down? Or do we gotta remind you where you are? Savannah's fists curled. She could take Carmen. But not here. Not now. She needed to be smart. Not interested, she said coolly. Go find someone else to play with. She turned. And then. Bam. A sharp blow to her back sent her stumbling forward. Savannah whipped around, just in time to see Carmen swing again. This time, Savannah moved. She dodged the punch and drove her fist into Carmen's gut. Carmen grunted, doubling over, but Savannah knew better than to stop there. She grabbed Carmen by the collar and slammed her against the fence. A stunned silence rippled through the yard. Savannah leaned in, her voice low and steady. Try that again, and I won't hold back. Carmen's eyes narrowed, her breath labored, but then, she did something unexpected. She laughed. Slowly, she pulled herself upright, smirking. Damn, Brooks. Thought you'd be softer. She cracked her neck. All right, ladies. Guess she ain't scared after all. With a final chuckle, Carmen backed off. The yard returned to normal. But Savannah knew this wasn't over. It was just the beginning. That night, Savannah lay on her thin prison mattress, staring at the ceiling. Her muscles ached, but she had no bruises. A small victory. Still, she knew she had to get out of here. Not just because she wasn't safe, but because Elijah wasn't safe either. Grayson had framed her. That meant he had powerful allies. And if he knew Elijah had seen something, he wouldn't hesitate to make him disappear. Savannah had to act. She had one ally on the outside, Jacob Miles. But Jacob wasn't enough. She needed more. Someone who could actually help her escape. And she knew just the person. Cole Mercer. He hadn't been on her side in the courtroom. But something in his eyes had told her he wasn't fully convinced either. She had to get to him. She had to make him believe her. Because if she didn't, she might never see her son again. Savannah sat on the edge of her thin, uncomfortable prison bed, her mind racing. The walls of Ironwood Correctional Facility felt like they were closing in on her, but she refused to let them break her. She had survived her first real confrontation with Carmen Vega, and for now, she had bought herself some space. But time was running out. She had to find a way out of here. Not just for herself. For Elijah. Grayson had framed her, and if he knew that Elijah had seen something, then her son was in more danger than ever. She needed an ally on the outside. And she needed one fast. Savannah waited until lights out before she made her move. Cole Mercer. She had one chance to get through to him. One shot. If he didn't listen, she was out of options. She carefully pulled out a small piece of paper she had hidden beneath her mattress, a note she had written earlier that day. Cole, you know this isn't right. I need your help. She folded the note as small as she could, gripping it tightly in her fist. Now came the hard part. Getting the message out. Savannah's first hurdle was the prison guards. Ironwood was a fortress, and she knew from the moment she arrived that at least some of the guards were dirty. That meant she had to be careful. Very careful. But in a place like this, everyone had a price. She had spent the last 2 days watching, learning the shifts, the patterns, the officers who looked the other way for the right people. And she had found one. Officer Davis. He wasn't one of the truly corrupt ones, but he was lazy and greedy, a dangerous combination. She had seen him take favors from inmates before, slipping notes or extra food to the ones who had connections. And now, she needed him to do the same for her. The next morning, during breakfast, Savannah made her move. Officer Davis was standing near the serving line, his eyes half-lidded with boredom. She slid next to him, keeping her expression calm and neutral. Davis, she murmured. He barely looked at her. Keep moving, Brooks. Savannah didn't move. Instead, she reached into her pocket and palmed a folded piece of paper, sliding it onto the counter next to his tray. Davis glanced down, his expression not changing. Savannah kept her voice low and steady. Get that to Mercer. For a moment, Davis didn't react. Then, without looking at her, he casually picked up his tray, the note disappearing into his pocket. Savannah's heart pounded, but she kept her face blank. Davis walked away without another word. She didn't know if it would work. She didn't know if Cole would even read it. But it was a chance. And right now, a chance was all she had. The wait was unbearable. By the time the afternoon rolled around, Savannah was sure that either Davis had ignored her, or worse, he had handed the note over to the wrong people. She had almost convinced herself it had been a mistake when it happened. A guard walked into the common area, his expression unreadable. Brooks, he called. Savannah stiffened. Visitor. Her heart leaped into her throat. She forced herself to act normal, standing slowly, keeping her movements casual. But inside, she was praying it was him, when Savannah stepped into the visitation room, she felt her breath catch in her throat. Sitting behind the glass, gripping the phone tightly, was Detective Cole Mercer. She sat down, picking up the receiver. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Cole exhaled. "This is a bad idea, Savannah." Savannah leaned forward. "You read the note." Cole's jaw tightened. "I did. And it was stupid." Savannah ignored the insult. "Then why are you here?" Cole ran a hand down his face. "Because I don't know what to believe anymore." Savannah's pulse spiked. That was it. That was the hesitation she had been hoping for. She kept her voice low and urgent. "Cole. You know me. Do you really believe I would do something like this?" Cole didn't answer. Savannah pushed harder. "Think about it. The evidence against me. It's too perfect. Too clean. And Grayson? He's the one leading this whole thing." Cole's fingers tightened around the phone. "That doesn't mean. He's dirty, Cole." Savannah cut him off. "I don't know how deep it goes, but I know he framed me." Cole exhaled sharply. "You don't have proof." Savannah's eyes darkened. "I do. But I need your help to get it." Cole was silent. Savannah leaned closer. Elijah saw something. Cole's head snapped up. "What?" Savannah's voice wavered. "Elijah. My son. He saw something the night before I was arrested. He hasn't told me everything, but I know it has to do with Grayson." Cole looked away, his jaw clenching. "Damn it, Savannah." Savannah's fingers gripped the receiver tightly. "You have to protect him, Cole," she whispered. "I can't do it from in here." Cole exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. "If I do this," he said, voice rough, "I need something solid. Something that proves Grayson is dirty." Savannah took a slow breath. "There's a hard drive. A hidden one. Grayson doesn't know I have it." Cole's eyes snapped back to hers. "Where?" Savannah's lips parted. Then, the guard grabbed her arm. "Time's up, Brooks." Savannah tensed. Cole straightened, urgency flashing across his face. "Where is it, Savannah?" Savannah's pulse hammered. The guard yanked her up from her seat. She had seconds. So she did the only thing she could. She mouthed the words. "Locker 37. Train station. Bottom row." Cole's eyes widened. And then she was gone. As the guards dragged her back toward her cell, Savannah didn't fight. Because now, she had done her part. Now, it was up to Cole. And if he really did still have a conscience, if he really still cared about the truth. Then this was just the beginning. Cole sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His mind was racing, replaying every second of his conversation with Savannah in the prison visitation room. Locker 37. Train station. Bottom row. Her words were seared into his brain. He knew he shouldn't be here. If anyone found out he was even considering helping Savannah, his entire career would be over. His badge, his pension, his reputation, gone. But something wasn't sitting right. He had known Savannah for years. They had worked cases together, had each other's backs in firefights, shared the kind of trust that wasn't easy to come by in law enforcement. And deep down, he knew she wasn't dirty. He had told himself that the evidence against her was too strong. That he couldn't fight the system. But now, the doubt was eating away at him. Grayson had been too eager to shut Savannah's case down. Too quick to push the conviction through. And if Elijah really had seen something? Cole ran a hand over his face, cursing under his breath. Then, without another thought, he threw the car into drive. He had to see for himself. The train station locker room was nearly empty when Cole arrived, the dim yellow lights flickering overhead. The air smelled like dust and old metal, the faint hum of the tracks vibrating beneath his feet. He kept his head down as he moved through the narrow aisles, scanning the numbered lockers until the first man lunged. Cole dodged, slamming his elbow into the guy's ribs before twisting his wrist to disarm him. The gun hit the ground with a dull clatter, sliding across the floor. The second man charged from behind, and Cole barely had time to react before he felt an arm wrap around his throat. Damn it! Cole slammed his foot backward, hitting the guy in the knee, breaking the hold long enough to drive his elbow into his face. The man stumbled back, but didn't go down. These weren't just thugs. They were trained. And Cole was outnumbered. His only choice was to run. Cole grabbed the gun off the floor, firing one warning shot into the air before bolting toward the exit. The gunshot sent the station into chaos. Passengers screamed, dropping their bags and diving for cover. Cole used the distraction, weaving through the panicked crowd, his heart slamming against his ribs. The two men were right behind him. He burst through the side exit, hitting the pavement at a full sprint. Cole didn't stop running until he reached his car. He threw the door open, dove inside, and peeled out of the parking lot just as the two men emerged from the station. They didn't chase him. They didn't have to. Cole knew what that meant. They knew who he was. His hands were still shaking when he finally pulled into a secluded alleyway and locked the doors. He yanked the hard drive from his pocket, his breath still ragged. Whoever those guys were, they had been willing to kill for this. Which meant whatever was on this hard drive. It was big. Cole grabbed his laptop from the back seat, plugged in the hard drive, and opened the files. What he saw made his stomach turn. The screen flickered, and a series of surveillance videos popped up. The first file was timestamped for 3 nights before Savannah's arrest. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Cole's pulse spiked as he watched. The video showed Captain Malcolm Grayson standing in a dimly lit warehouse. And next to him, Robert Hale. Cole's blood ran cold. Robert Hale was supposed to be dead. The official report said he had been murdered the same night Savannah was framed. But this footage proved that wasn't true. He had been alive after the supposed time of death. Which meant someone had lied. Someone had killed Hale later and tampered with the timestamps to frame Savannah. And Grayson was right there in the footage. Cole clicked to the next file, his hands clammy. The second video was even worse. This one was taken inside the police evidence room. And there, clear as day, was Grayson himself, planting the stolen money. Cole's stomach twisted. It was a setup. Everything. The entire case against Savannah was manufactured. Grayson had framed her, staged the evidence, and lied under oath. And worse? If Grayson had done this, who else was involved? Cole exhaled shakily. This wasn't just about clearing Savannah's name anymore. This was about exposing the truth. And if he had any doubt left, it disappeared the moment he clicked on the final video. The last file was short, only 12 seconds long. But it froze Cole to the core. The footage showed Grayson standing outside Savannah's house the night before her arrest. And then, Elijah appeared. The video was silent, but Cole could see the moment when Elijah froze, staring at Grayson. The moment Grayson realized Elijah had seen something he wasn't supposed to. The moment Grayson stepped toward the boy. And the moment Elijah ran. Cole's hands trembled. Elijah had seen something. And if Grayson had any idea that Cole had this footage, Elijah wouldn't be safe for long. Cole slammed his laptop shut. He had made his choice. He pulled out his phone, his throat dry. He only had one call to make. Jacob, he said. The second Savannah's lawyer picked up. Jacob sounded tired. Cole. What? Listen to me. Cole's voice was deadly serious. We have a problem. And we need to get Elijah out of there now. Jacob Miles nearly dropped his phone. Wait, what? He asked, pushing away the files on his desk. His office was dimly lit, the only sound the faint hum of his desktop computer. He had spent the last 2 years fighting a legal war for Savannah Brooks, trying to find the smallest crack in the case that could set her free. Now, out of nowhere, Detective Cole Mercer was calling him, sounding like the world was about to collapse. We need to move Elijah. Now. Jacob stood, his pulse spiking. Cole, what the hell are you talking about? Cole's voice was low and urgent. I have proof. Grayson set Savannah up. And worse? He knows Elijah saw something. Jacob froze. There was no doubt in his mind that Malcolm Grayson was a dangerous man, but if what Cole was saying was true, Elijah is in serious danger. Jacob grabbed his car keys, already heading for the door. Where are you? Cole was breathing heavily on the other end. I'm on my way to you. But I don't think we're the only ones looking for him. Jacob stopped cold. Elijah's with Naomi, he whispered. Cole cursed under his breath. We need to get to them first. Jacob didn't hesitate. He ran for his car. Jacob drove like hell. The streets blurred past him as he gripped the wheel, his pulse hammering. He knew Naomi never trusted him, and she sure as hell didn't trust Savannah's old cop friends. But if Grayson wanted Elijah silenced. Jacob hit the gas. When he reached Naomi's house, his heart plummeted. The front door was wide open. A bad sign. Jacob jumped out of the car, his blood turning ice cold. Naomi? Elijah? No answer. His stomach twisted as he rushed up the steps, shoving open the door. The living room was a mess, a broken lamp, scattered papers, a chair knocked over. A struggle. Then. A soft noise from down the hall. Jacob froze. Elijah? Silence. Then, a whimper. Jacob followed the sound, his heart pounding. He stepped into the kitchen, and there, huddled in the corner, was Elijah. The boy's face was streaked with tears, his small hands clenched into fists. He was alone. Jacob knelt beside him. Elijah. Are you hurt? Elijah shook his head rapidly, his body trembling. Jacob gripped his shoulders. Where's Naomi? Elijah's lower lip quivered. They took her. Jacob's blood ran cold. Who? He demanded. Elijah's eyes were wide with terror. The same men who took my mom. Jacob's stomach plummeted. Grayson's men had come for Naomi. Which meant if he hadn't gotten here in time, Elijah would have been next. Jacob grabbed his phone, his fingers shaking as he dialed. Cole answered on the first ring. I got him, Jacob breathed. But Naomi's gone. Cole swore violently. Jacob exhaled, forcing himself to focus. We need to move. Now. They didn't waste time. By the time Cole arrived, Jacob had already packed a bag for Elijah. The boy was quiet, too quiet, his small body curled into the passenger seat. Cole pulled up, his car still running. He jumped out and opened the back door. Elijah, get in. Elijah hesitated, glancing at Jacob. Jacob knelt beside him. You trust me, right? Elijah nodded. Then trust Cole, too. Elijah swallowed hard, then climbed into the back seat. Cole shut the door behind him and looked at Jacob. There's a safe house outside the city, Cole said. No one but me and one other guy knows about it. Jacob nodded. I'll follow you. They didn't waste another second. They drove in silence, the tension in the car thick as steel. After about 20 minutes, Elijah finally spoke. They were watching the house, he whispered. Cole glanced at him in the rearview mirror. When? Elijah's voice was small. For a while. I saw a man outside at night sometimes. He never knocked. Never came in. Just stood there. Cole's fingers tightened on the wheel. Elijah, he said carefully. What did you see the night before your mom was arrested? Elijah hesitated. Jacob turned in his seat. It's okay, buddy. You can tell us. Elijah took a shaky breath. Then. I saw Grayson, he whispered. Cole's stomach dropped. He was outside my house, Elijah continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Talking to someone. They were whispering, but I heard a name. Cole and Jacob leaned in. What name? Cole asked. Elijah looked up, his eyes filled with fear. Robert Hale. Cole felt the air leave his lungs. Robert Hale. The dead informant. The man who had supposedly been murdered before Savannah's arrest. But if Grayson had been talking about him the night before the frame-up, then that meant Hale had been alive when Savannah was arrested. Cole and Jacob exchanged a look of realization. Everything Savannah had said was true. Grayson had framed her. And now he was tying up loose ends. Jacob exhaled sharply. If Grayson thinks Elijah knows something. Cole's jaw clenched. Then he won't stop until Elijah disappears. Jacob turned back to Elijah, trying to keep his voice calm. Do you remember what they were saying? Elijah hesitated. I just remember one thing Grayson said. Cole waited. What was it? Elijah's hands gripped his seatbelt tightly. He took a deep breath. Then, in a small, shaky voice, he repeated the words that had haunted him ever since that night. Make sure she never talks. The words hit Cole like a punch to the gut. Jacob's face drained of color. That was it. That was the missing piece. Grayson had wanted Robert Hale dead because he knew too much. And now. He was coming for Elijah next. Cole tightened his grip on the steering wheel. We end this. Tonight. The safe house was a small, nondescript cabin on the outskirts of the city, hidden deep in the woods where no one could find them. Cole parked the car and immediately got out, scanning the area. The trees loomed tall around them, the wind whispering through the leaves. It was quiet. Too quiet. Jacob pulled up behind them, stepping out quickly. Elijah, stay in the car, he said, his voice firm but calm. The boy hesitated but nodded, clutching his backpack tightly. Cole turned to Jacob. We need a plan. If Grayson finds us, he won't come alone. Jacob exhaled sharply. We don't have time to wait. We need to get to Savannah. Now. Cole clenched his jaw. You think it's that easy? We don't even know if she's still in Ironwood. She is, Jacob said immediately. I called my contact at the prison. She's still there, for now. Cole frowned. What do you mean, for now? Jacob ran a hand through his hair, his face tense. Grayson just pulled some strings. They're transferring her to Blackgate Correctional. Maximum security. If she gets sent there, we'll never get her out. Cole swore under his breath. Blackgate wasn't just a prison, it was a tomb. If Savannah got transferred, her chances of ever getting a fair trial, or surviving, were zero. We have to move tonight, Cole said. Before the transfer. Jacob nodded. Then we better gear up. Inside the cabin, Cole opened a steel case hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside were 2 pistols, extra ammunition, and a burner phone. Jacob raised an eyebrow. Planning for a war? Cole didn't answer. He just loaded the pistol and handed one to Jacob. We don't get a second chance at this, Cole muttered. Jacob checked the clip and nodded. Then let's make it count. Ironwood was heavily guarded, but Cole had an inside man. Officer Davis. He had already proven himself corruptible, and Cole had paid him well to look the other way at the right moment. The plan was simple. Davis would disable the back gate security for exactly 5 minutes. Jacob would drive the getaway car and keep the engine running. Cole would get Savannah out. No backup. No second chances. Cole gripped his gun as they approached the outer fences of Ironwood. The sky was pitch black, the only light coming from the high prison towers. He checked his watch. 2:57 a.m. The back gate would be down in 3 minutes. Let's hope Davis keeps his word, Jacob muttered. Cole said nothing. Because if Davis didn't, they were all dead. At exactly 3 a.m., the back security lights flickered once, then cut off. The steel gate slid open. Cole didn't wait. He sprinted across the open yard, keeping low, his pulse hammering. He reached the side entrance, where Davis was waiting, already sweating. "You owe me for this," Davis hissed. "Big time." Cole didn't stop moving. "Just open the damn door." Davis swiped his keycard, and the door clicked unlocked. Cole slipped inside. He knew exactly where Savannah's cell was. Savannah was awake when he got there. She had been sitting on her cot, her arms wrapped around herself, lost in thought. But when she saw who was standing at her cell door, her entire body went rigid. "Cole." "No time for questions," Cole muttered, pulling out a stolen keycard. "We're leaving." Savannah stared at him for a second, then sprang to her feet. "You're actually doing this?" she whispered. Cole unlocked the door, stepping inside. "I wasn't going to. But then I saw the hard drive." Savannah's eyes widened. "You found it?" Cole nodded. "And I saw the footage. Grayson set you up. But more than that. He's coming for Elijah." Savannah froze. For a second, Cole thought she was going to break down. But then, her face hardened. "Then we don't have time to waste." Savannah kept close to Cole as they moved through the corridors, her heartbeat in her throat. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound like an alarm. They had just rounded the last corner when... "Stop right there." A guard had spotted them. Cole reacted first, grabbing Savannah's wrist and pulling her into a sprint. The alarm blared across the prison. More guards stormed into the hallways, their shouts ringing through the building. Cole pulled his gun. 2 shots. The first hit the light fixture, plunging the hallway into darkness. The second shattered a fire alarm, sending sprinklers raining down. Chaos erupted. Savannah and Cole used the distraction to break for the exit. Davis was already waiting at the gate, his face pale. "Hurry up," he hissed. They raced outside, sprinting toward Jacob's car. The engine was already roaring, the back door flung open. They dove inside. Jacob hit the gas. And just like that, they were free. Cole, Savannah, Jacob, and Elijah sat in a safe house, the weight of everything finally sinking in. Savannah was free. But Grayson was still out there. And he wasn't going to let them go so easily. Cole placed the hard drive on the table. "This is enough to bury him," he said. "But only if we play this smart." Jacob nodded. "We need to get it to someone who can actually take him down." Savannah looked at them both. Then, she turned to Elijah, who was sitting quietly on the couch. She knelt in front of him, pulling him into her arms. "I'm so sorry, baby," she whispered. "I should have been there." Elijah held on to her tightly. "I never stopped believing in you." Savannah's eyes welled up, but she pushed the tears back. Then she stood, turning to Cole. "We end this." Cole smirked. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." 37. Bottom row. Just like she said. Cole crouched down, his heart pounding, and reached for the lock. It was already broken. A surge of panic shot through him. Someone had been here. His fingers gripped the locker door, slowly pulling it open. Inside, wedged in the corner, was a small, black hard drive. Cole grabbed it, slipping it into his jacket pocket. Then, before he could even stand, the sound of footsteps behind him. He reacted instantly, spinning just in time to see two men approaching from opposite ends of the aisle. Not cops. Cole's gut twisted. These weren't random guys. These were professionals. And they were here for the same thing he was.